What's up, everybody? Good afternoon. We got more Pro Football Focus stuff to take a look at. We got some more data, and this time we're doing the defense. So this one is not going to be so fun. This one, we gave up 42 points, didn't force a single turnover, got minimal quarterback pressure, forced what, 3 punts? So it's going to be bad. Like, it is just going to be bad. And it is what it is, and it's understandable given how many players we were missing. But it's still not going to be fun to go through these numbers. And there are going to be some players that we have higher expectations of that are going to have to be called out a little bit here. Maybe not the players you were necessarily expecting, but there's going to be some stuff that we have to criticize on this side of the ball. Because that was not a winning effort, regardless of who's playing. So let's go through the list here. Number one on the list, mostly because of his really good run defense, which that's good to see because the first couple games were not so great. Derek Hall was our highest graded defensive player. Not by much, but by a little. Mostly because he did a really good job in run defense. And overall, I don't think you can say the run defense was that bad given how many players we were missing. There were some bad plays, bad moments, but a much bigger problem was letting Goff go 18 of 18, of course. So Derek Hall, he gets shouted out positively. I felt like he played well watching that game too, so I'm not in disagreement with it. Jarran Reed was the next guy who deserves positive credit here. Played a good game. Was the one guy who offered any kind of consistent pressure on Goff. If anybody did, it was him. Then you got Miles Adams, who only played 20 snaps, but played fairly well, it seems. No complaints. Did his job. I like what I see from Miles Adams overall. I think that there are some positive things he can do for this team. It is interesting that the team likes him more than Mike Morris, although PFF would agree with their assessment there, I think. So read into that as you will. Devin Witherspoon, very surprising to me here. Graded out well, 72.5. Now, again, I'm not going to say I agree with everything that PFF had there. I think that they didn't give him negative credit for some plays where maybe he deserved negative credit. But there is something to be said for this idea of you make a mistake that should only be a little mistake, but because everyone else made a mistake on that play too, it becomes a big mistake. And I'll talk about what I mean by that a little bit later. But you look at the breakdown here, they did kill him for the tackling, deservedly so. But they thought he did pretty well in coverage, which seems to be a pretty fair assessment. And his pass rush grade, that's pretty aces right there, right? 90.3, he can rush the passer. And rounding out the top five, and really the last defensive player that played well, according to PFF, was Tyrese Knight. They thought he played a pretty well-rounded game, including in coverage, which really needs to be shouted out because Knight has obviously gotten pushed around in coverage to this point in his career. So he had a good game in coverage. He got a QB pressure first time in his career. Did miss one tackle, but the body of work for Tyrese Knight was actually quite good in this game. And I want to really give him credit for that because he is being put in a bad situation right now as a rookie, and he's gutting it out. We are getting more from Tyrese Knight so far than I expected. And credit where credit's due. And that's really kind of the end of the conversation here. Bohanna did get an okay grade, but he only played 6 snaps, so whatever. Everybody else was a little below average to way below average, okay? Like everything else is bad, or at the very least, not good. Maybe some of it's like average. Right? Kobe Bryant, about average. Julian Love, Jonathan Hankins, Tyus Bowser, Woolen. We're starting to get now into like the decidedly below average stuff. And look, I'll say this. I don't know if I totally agree with how low Woolen was graded in this game based off of his coverage numbers, which we'll get to later. But there is something to be said for his run defense, which I thought was a little bit sloppy in this game, and PFF backs that up. Draymond Jones, another poorly graded game, mostly because he missed a tackle, but they didn't really like anything in particular that he did, which, okay, fair enough. Again, I think that the ask of him was a little too big, but it does go back to the original argument, which is that he is overpaid. And I think that he continues to be overpaid, not critically so, but enough to notice. Rayshawn, pretty poorly graded out, which I think that's consistent with what I saw out there. Morris, not good. Trey Brown, not good. They gave him a touchdown allowed, by the way, which surprised me. More on that later. Dodson, this is the one that really hurts because Dodson played almost every snap. And it's interesting because it was mostly in coverage, right? This other stuff's fine. The coverage killed him. And that's something we're going to have to monitor going forward at least a little bit. Drake Thomas, awful. Kevon Wallace, awful. Travis Gibson, one of the lowest grades I've ever seen a player get for a full game. Now, he only played 12 snaps. I know that, like, all these guys at the very bottom didn't play that much, and that helps. Or, I guess in this case, in this context, it doesn't help. But, woof, right? It's enough snaps to where it mattered that these guys were so bad. And Gibson even had a quarterback pressure. He actually got a pressure in 12 snaps, and he still had the worst grade of any player I've seen in a long time. So the tackling was not as bad as I thought it would be. We were credited with 7 missed tackles. I think the problem was we had like 4 of them come on that one play to Montgomery. And you can see that no one player missed more than one, right? Gibson had one, Dodson had one, Rayshawn, Draymond, Julian Love, Knight, Witherspoon. So it's not like there was one player to really like call out here super negatively. And 7 is not that bad. I would say, though, Detroit didn't run that many plays. So 7's a little bit worse than it looks. If you miss 7 tackles in like 65 plays, that's understandable. Detroit didn't run anywhere near 65 plays. So it is a little bit worse than it looks. Still, though, it's not as bad as I was expecting going into this look at the numbers. Pass rushing stuff. The only players to get positively graded here really were Witherspoon and Reed. And you can see, the only player who had multiple pressures in this game was Reed with 3. Other than that, you get 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. It's not enough. It's not going to cut it. Although, it is worth noting that Detroit only threw the ball like what? They dropped back to pass like less than 23 times. So we did still get pressure on a pretty high percentage of their dropbacks. But the problem is the plays where we don't get pressure, it just goes on and on and on and on and on, it feels like. So in terms of a percentage, these numbers are not going to look atrocious. I will say that, right? Because people are going to say, oh, we got 11 pressures. Goff dropped back to pass 21, I think it was 21 times, and then you had the fake play. So that's actually pressure on half of your snaps, or close to it, because I think some of these are going to be like, oh, well, we got pressure with multiple guys on one play, but nobody really took over, which not super surprising, straight up. If you watch that game, it didn't seem like anybody really took over. Reed came the closest. Reed did play well. I give him credit for doing what he could. So, hey, Jarran Reed still getting it done at his old age. He's grinding it out. Okay, so coverage, very interesting. And you guys know that I don't really like PFF coverage stuff that much. I much prefer PFR. But I want to highlight some things here. And we're going to go in tandem with like the individual data from each player that PFF provides in coverage. So here's the thing with Witherspoon. The reason why Witherspoon was graded fairly well is that he allowed 3 targets, 3 catches, 50 yards. But almost all of those yards came on the David Montgomery play, where Montgomery caught the ball at the line of scrimmage, basically, and then ran for 40 yards. Now, Witherspoon missed a tackle on that play. He did. But that missed tackle should have resulted in a few yards. It should not have resulted in 40. It resulted in 40 because nobody else could tackle him. So, I think that's the hang-up here. You have a play where Witherspoon does mess up. He misses a tackle. He should have made the tackle. He didn't. But the mistake should have only cost you at most like 10 yards. But this guy misses a tackle. This guy misses a tackle. That guy takes a bad angle. It's 40 yards. So when you look at it like that, it's really not that bad. He gave up 1 catch to Raymond for 9 yards, 1 catch to Laporta for 1 yard. Like, that's really nothing in the grand scheme of things. So almost all of his yards were yak. So I can kind of see that. Now, here's the problem. This is not giving Witherspoon any blame for the 70-yard touchdown to Jameson Williams, which maybe he wasn't the primary guy. Hard for me to believe that he had nothing to do with that play, though. And it's also giving him no blame for the touchdown that iced the game to Amon-Ra, which, again, I don't know if I agree with who PFF put that play on. I'm going to have to rewatch it. I haven't had a chance to rewatch the game yet. I will. But I don't know if you can absolve Witherspoon of blame for those 2 touchdowns. And PFF has. Right? Knight, 1 target, 1 catch, 4 yards. Now, granted, I know Goff didn't throw the ball that much, but this is still really impressive to me. Because to me, Knight was the weakness in this coverage unit. And they didn't really pick on him in this game. They didn't have to, but they still didn't. Julian Love didn't allow much. Woolen, 1 catch on 1 target for 10 yards. That's whatever. It was, I think it was, hold on. Who was that? Jameson Williams, 1 catch, 10 yards. Kind of weird to me that he gets a 55 when he plays 24 coverage snaps and only allows 1 target. I don't know if I buy it. Draymond didn't allow anything. Derek Hall didn't allow anything. Still not good coverage grades, though, which means nothing to me because it's 1 snap each. But kind of weird how PFF does this sometimes, right? Trey Brown got dinged because he allowed the touchdown to Amon-Ra. Allowed. I'm going to have to look at it again. My first inclination was the touchdown was either on Witherspoon or Kobe. So Trey Brown must have really blown his coverage because I don't think he was anywhere near Amon-Ra. The 2 guys I saw near Amon-Ra were Witherspoon and Kobe Bryant. So the fact that they gave it to Trey Brown, either they got it really wrong or Trey Brown got it really wrong. So that's interesting. Bowser, nothing. Jenkins gets beat up a little bit. Drake Thomas gives up the 17-yard catch. Kayvon, that's the one that really hurts here, obviously. I mean, Kayvon, my goodness. 70 yards on 1 target. Again, I don't know if it's right to completely absolve Witherspoon of blame on that play, but I do suspect that Wallace was the primary culprit there. Dodson, 5 targets, 75 yards. That's about as bad as it gets. That's why they didn't have to pick on Knight, right? They picked on Dodson. So he's got some stuff to answer for. It's hard to cover when you can't rush the passer, though. So I'm not tripping that hard on it, right? Like, let's take a look at the individual stuff for Dodson here. A couple to Tim Patrick and a couple to Amon-Ra. Yeah, a linebacker shouldn't be trying to cover a wide receiver if you're being straight honest. So even that is like, okay, I get it. And then 1 to Brock Wright, 10-yarder. That was the 1 tight end. But, like, it's probably a bad idea to have Dodson trying to cover Tim Patrick and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Where were we? Yeah, and then Gibson, who gave up the touchdown pass to Goff, which, I mean, that basically does it, right? There's not much to say at that point, right? You give up a touchdown pass to Jared Goff, that's okay. But if you give up a touchdown pass to Jared Goff, you're getting dinged pretty heavily, and he was. All right, that's really it for the coverage stuff. Pretty much what you would expect. Not a good game. Never a good day when you give up 19 of 19. But there's some debate here over who to blame for what. Is Witherspoon to blame for the 2 touchdowns? Or are we really just going to give the whole thing to Trey Brown and Gibbs and Kayvon Wallace? I don't know. Special teams, real quick. Special teams. McIntosh is doing his job on special teams, right? Highest graded special team player made a tackle. Brady Russell made a tackle on special teams as well. Chenault graded out fairly well. Still waiting for Chenault to become the weapon that I believe that he is. Almost everyone else pretty anonymous. And then some guys at the bottom here who got dinged for penalties. Charbonnet, Trey Brown, Curtis. And Curtis's didn't even count. Derek Young had the holding penalty on the long kick return by D. Williams. So pretty much what you would expect. Not much to say here. And that's it. That's it for PFF. What do you guys think? Let me know. I'll see you guys later. Maybe another video later today. If not, I'll see you tomorrow. We'll see what happens. But that is your Pro Football Focus look at the Seahawks defense for week number 4. Go Hawks.